Okay, so today we're having a look at the top 10 football players in the world so far this season. In most of my shorts, I say that these lists are not in any particular order, but today this is in a very concise order, a well put together order in my opinion. That's why we're doing a longer video. I could have done this in a short, but we're doing this. And then also, just before we start, this is only for this season and how these players have played during the season. Premier League, Champions League, Cups in their domestic leagues. Also, the World Cup counts a lot in this list. So we'll get into it and we'll see where these players ranked. But before we start, also I have some disclaimers. Honorable mentions to Kvaratskhelia, Modric, Benzema, ter Stegen and Vini. These players did not make the list. There are also other players that didn't make the list that were also very close, but I just thought I've mentioned these 5 because they've been amazing. Not so much Benzema this season. I could probably have Lewandowski there instead of Benzema, but I just thought to mention these 5 players. But without wasting any more time, let's get into the list. And in 10th place, I have Joshua Kimmich. Most casual fans will try to disagree with this take, having Kimmich at number 10 in this top 10 list. But those of us that know football know how important Kimmich is to this Bayern Munich team, a team who has been excellent so far this season, both in the Champions League and the Bundesliga. They could have been better in the Bundesliga. They've dropped a few points here and there. Their lead should be much bigger to Dortmund, but it is what it is. You drop a few points. They still have a game in hand at the time of this recording, and if they win their game in hand, they go 3 points at the top. So Bayern are still doing well. And the most important player in this team, the player whenever I watch Bayern, the player that always stands out is Joshua Kimmich in their midfield. I also want to highlight the Champions League performances because that's where mostly I've watched Joshua Kimmich. And in the Champions League, Bayern Munich have had one of the toughest paths so far. They've had to play the best team in Spain, in Barcelona, who have the best defense in Europe. They've had to play Inter Milan, who currently sit in the top 3 of the Serie A and are now through to the quarterfinals. And they've also had to play PSG, who on paper are one of the best teams in the world and have the 3 best players, 3 of the best offensive players in their attack. And Bayern brushed through all these teams as if it was nothing really. They won all their games in the group stage, if I'm not mistaken, or if not all of them, then most of their games, and then they brushed through PSG as if it was nothing. And time again, whenever I watch this team, again, the player that stands out to me is Kimmich. If you go and look at the advanced statistics, not just goals and assists, you'll find out that Kimmich ranks extremely high whenever you're talking about passes into the final third, progressive passes, progressive dribbles, anything that has to do with transporting the ball from the midfield to the final third, where Bayern have excellent players that have been able to finish all throughout the year. Kimmich is essential to that. Kimmich is extremely essential to this team. Also defensively, as we all know, Kimmich used to be a right back, so all of the things that he learned at right back playing under Pep Guardiola has transferred over to him now playing in the midfield. And Kimmich is one of, if not the most complete defensive midfielder in the world. So that's why he's at number 10. Again, more casual fans won't have Kimmich in the top 10, but those of us that know football, that know how important this man has been to this Bayern Munich team, know that it is very hard to name 10 players ahead of Joshua Kimmich. So that's the person I have on my number 10. On number 9, I have Bukayo Saka. And what a player Saka has been so far this season. At the tender age of 21, there are really only 2 players that play kind of in the similar position, in that right wing position, that I say are better than Saka in the world right now at the age of 21. And those 2 players, quick spoiler, Mbappe and Messi, they're 1 and 2 on this list. So for Saka to be amongst that conversation, for the only players in the world to be better than Saka in his positions, to be the 2 best football players in the world, 2 players that will go down as 2 greatest of all time. Messi, the greatest football player of all time, and Mbappe, when it's all said and done, I think will be not in the same conversation as, for example, Ronaldo and Messi. I don't think so, but he will also be very, very close to that top 10 all time per se. Let's just say that. So And then also how essential Saka has been to the way Arsenal play, the direct football that Arteta wants to play, how direct he wants his attackers to be. And when it comes to directness, again, there aren't many players more direct than Bukayo Saka. For example, when you look at progressive passes in Europe's top 5 leagues, Saka is number 1. When you look at progressive carries in Europe's top 5 leagues, Saka ranks within the top 3. It is amazing how direct he is and how successful he is with this directness. He's able to get the ball, face his opponents, and more times than not, he will beat them, and he'll be able to carry the ball into the opposition's final third and towards the box. To give an example of how important this is and how crucial this is, look at Anthony, for example, a player who is skillful per se, but whenever he gets the ball, he can't carry the ball as forward as much because he's being tackled every single time. And Saka has mastered the art of being direct and not letting his defenders, his opponents, get the best of him. And then the other 3 points I have are how clutch Saka has been, how many goals he's been able to score for Arsenal in crucial times this season, decisive goals to either help the team draw a game or to see them go ahead. Saka is the most clutch player at Arsenal, one of the most clutch players in the Premier League, and I think things like that also count. Also, how Saka was the best player for England in the World Cup. At least it was a surprise to me. I knew Saka was good. I know Saka was a good player, but for him to be the clear best player for England at the World Cup, yes, you could talk about how Kane also underperformed, but Saka stepped up. He stepped up massively, and when you look at England and all the negative things that happened to them during the World Cup, the few positive notes that they are, Saka is one of those positive things. He also has already 20 goal contributions in all competitions. So with all of these things having been said, I think it justifies Saka being number 9 on this list. The next player, number 8, is Marcus Rashford, and you could interchange these two. I think they are right around the same tier. I put Rashford ahead of Saka in terms of preference, and also how much more of an offensive burden Rashford has had to carry compared to Saka. By offensive burden, I pretty much mean that for the past few months, United's offense has pretty much just gone through Marcus Rashford, and he stepped up, especially since the World Cup. Marcus Rashford has stepped up, and it just goes to highlight how I said last season, how the season that just passed was a fluke and not at all an indicator of who the real Marcus Rashford was. Now, did I expect Rashford to have 30 goals and 9 assists by this time in March? We're in March, and Rashford already has 30 goals if you include the World Cup, which I am doing it, and 9 assists. It's insane. It's insane. He already has his goal scoring record so far this season has been insane. I don't know what they put in the water in Qatar, but it's been good for Rashford, and it has allowed Rashford to excel at an extremely high rate. His offensive game has gone up a notch in every single criteria. If you're looking at how much more he's efficient with his dribbling, a lot of the time I thought that in previous years Rashford would do some dribbles or try and take the ball into places that weren't as, let's say, useful to his team, that weren't as efficient. That has changed. Pretty much every time Rashford gets the ball, he's just looking at the goal and thinking of how he's going to get there. Finishing has improved. We've seen a lot of headers from Rashford this season. The goal he scored last week against Real Betis from outside the box, the amount of runs he's been able to do and the amount of passes he's been able to get in those runs in between the box and the centre back, where Rashford has pretty much been able to finish most of those chances. Rashford has improved massively. Again, between him and Saka, you could interchange them. Also, his World Cup performance, where he also scored 3 goals, which is also very good. But between Saka and Rashford, you can interchange them. I kind of prefer Rashford because of more of the offensive burden and more of the leadership role he's been able to take at Manchester United. 39 goal contributions so far this season. Insane. But the next one, number 7 on this list, is Osimhen. I think that Rashford and Saka are both, technically speaking, better football players than Osimhen. But the thing with Osimhen is that you can't deny how this man is banging in goals left, right, and center for the best team in Europe, the team that has been the best since the start of the season, whether in the league or the Champions League. If you put all those things together, Napoli are number 1. You could argue Barcelona, but they got knocked out of the Champions League in the group stage, went to the Europa League and got bounced off there as well. You could argue Bayern Munich, but they're struggling in the Bundesliga. You could argue No, you can't. Obviously, you can't do that. Man City are struggling in the league as well. Napoli they've been dominating in the league, and they've been dominating in the Champions League. And the big part of that is Osimhen and how clinical he's been in front of goal. The man already has 19 goals in the Serie A, and then another 4 to go with that in the Champions League in 5 games played. Speaking, I think that Rashford and Saka are both better football players than Osimhen. We're talking about this season and the impact these players have had this season. I have to rank Osimhen ahead of those two. Then at number 6, we have Mr. Casemiro, Mr. Case. Easily, easily the signing of the year. I have another signing that happened this year, slightly ranked ahead of him, but that player is going to be ranked ahead of is Haaland. I'm trying to make this a secret. I have Haaland ranked ahead of Casemiro on this list. Haaland's going to be number 5, Casemiro's number 6, but I still think that Casemiro is a much more valuable signing, and he's been the signing of the season because of how he's been able to change, to revolutionize this United midfield. Let's not forget that for the past, I'd say 3 to 4 years, United have had to deal with the likes of McTominay and Fred in their midfield, Andres Pereira, and etc. Players that are way below the mark, and Casemiro comes in, a world-class player, and instantly he changes this team. His defensive ability is bar none, but we knew that from Real Madrid. Casemiro is one of the best defensive midfielders of all time. I'm not talking about the likes of, for example, Busquets and Pirlo, who also play as registers per se, and their ability on the ball are better than their defensive abilities. Casemiro's biggest attribute is defensive ability, and he's been grand for United. He was also grand for Real Madrid. That's the biggest selling point for him. And just off that alone, he could be on this list. But to me, what's really been separated this season and why Casemiro is much higher this year than, let's say, for example, in previous years, has been his ability on the ball. Casemiro has been excellent on the ball. He's been able to create chances for United out of nowhere. He's also been able to act as that initial building block when United are trying to play from the back, because that's what Erik ten Hag wants. Casemiro has been essential, and as a signing of the year, he has to be on this list. I have said in the past in the PC Footy podcast that Rashford is the best player at Man United. That has been kind of biased. Rashford's my favorite player in the world, apart from Ronaldo. But yeah, when you're looking at things logically, and as I had to rank these players, Casemiro is the best player at Man United. He's top 3, top 4 player in the Premier League, in the top 10 in the world. And the number 5, as I said before, is Erling Haaland, and the goals speak for themselves. Maybe Haaland could have been higher on this list, but as we go through the last 4 players, and as I explain why I have those players ranked on the list where they are, I think it will be easier to understand. But why is Haaland number 5? Why is Haaland in this top 10 alone? Again, the goals speak for themselves. The man has 42 goals in 37 games played. That's insane. 28 of those goals coming from the Premier League, where he will break the Premier League goal scoring record. When Haaland first came to Manchester City in the summer last year, I think it was around June, I said to myself and on my channel that it was over for the Premier League. For the next 5 years, 5 to 3 years, we'll have to put the Premier League on hold, because Haaland and City is just a cheat code. I knew Haaland was going to be good from the start. I thought he was going to score 20 goals this season, 23. Maybe that would have been good enough to win the Golden Boot. I don't know. But I did not expect Haaland to break the goal scoring record this season. It's just insane. Like, on his first season, to come in and just break it straight away. Like, at least take some time to adapt to the team. The guy said, no, like, I'm here now. You're going to create chances, and I'm going to bury all those chances. I always believed that he was going to break the Premier League goal scoring record at some point, but I thought that was going to take him a season or at least 2 seasons to really, gel properly with this team and with the players in this team and to Pep Guardiola's system. But it hasn't. Look at Ronaldo's goal scoring record, who is the greatest goal scorer of all time. You can argue Messi being the best with his games played, etc. But Ronaldo has the most goals of all time in the Champions League and etc. I never thought that anyone ever would be able to break his goal scoring record, but Haaland's making me think twice. Maybe Haaland will not break Ronaldo's all-time scoring record, the 700 and something goals he scored, but in the Champions League, he can do it. Even if Haaland keeps bouncing from team to team, as long as he stays in teams that are able to create chances, enough chances for him per game, he'll, as we've seen this season, he'll put those chances to bed. So yeah, this man is on his way to breaking the Champions League scoring record. This season he's been amazing, and I think that the 5th spot in this top 10 is deserved. Then we have Harry Kane. And this is where, the big debates can begin, whether you want to have Kane over Haaland or etc. I have Kane over Haaland, and it's for two main reasons. One, Kane's game is way more complete than Haaland. Haaland's a great goal scorer. That's about his game. I'm not undermining that. I'm just compared to Kane, I have to say that, because when you look at Kane's goal scoring record, I would say when you look at Kane's goal scoring record, it's elite. Kane's dribbling ability and playmaking ability is also elite. Kane's overall game is excellent, and we saw it last year when Son was able to win the Golden Boot. How much Kane, I wouldn't say sacrificed, but how much Kane was influential into that happening. The way Kane was able to drop down and a lot of times feed Son to score those goals. So that's number one. Kane is just a more complete player than Haaland. And number two, Kane also has 21 goals. We're only in March, and the difference is that Kane is doing it for Tottenham, a Tottenham side that is being managed by Antonio Conte, one of the most pragmatic defensive managers in the world, who's playing with a back five, compared to Pep Guardiola, who is an attacking genius, who's been an attacking genius since 2008. He plays in a 4-3-3 with the likes of Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Foden, Grealish, De Bruyne in his team, and Kane is only 7 goals away from him. So the goal scoring record is about the same, and Haaland's a more complete player. I have to give Kane the nod and put him on number 4. Then on number 3, we have the player who I think is the best player in the Premier League, in Kevin De Bruyne. With Kevin De Bruyne, I'm not going to waste much time, because it is pretty much some of the things that we've been saying for the past few years. He also finished 3rd last year in the top 10 Ballon d'Or. De Bruyne hasn't gotten worse. As good as Kane and Haaland both are, De Bruyne is just a much better football player. When you're talking about De Bruyne and his playmaking ability, there's about 5 players, maybe 6 players that I can name that are better than De Bruyne all time, and those players are all considered great, likes of Messi, Iniesta, Modric, Xavi, maybe Pirlo, Busquets, and the list kind of ends there. And for De Bruyne, that's a great company to be within, and he hasn't really slowed down this year. He's still putting up the numbers that he's putting up. You can argue that he's playing with Haaland and he will get those assists anyways, but he was putting up those numbers before. And yeah, with De Bruyne, number 3, I don't think it is crazy to say that he's better than Haaland. That he's been better than Haaland and Kane this season, and Casemiro. So number 3 is deserved. Then we get into the 2 players who I think are the number 1 and number 2 in the world, with Kylian Mbappe and Lionel Messi. We'll talk about Mbappe first. And the thing I want to say about Mbappe is him in football right now. The only problem with Mbappe is that he is playing with the greatest football player of all time. And when I talk about Messi and all the things I have to say about Messi, I think it'll be easier to understand why I have him over Mbappe. But let's give the man his flowers, man. Mbappe is him, and the only reason why he isn't number 1 is because he's playing at the same time or alongside the greatest to ever do it. We'll talk about his World Cup performance, which will go down in history as one of the greatest World Cup performances of all time, comparable to R9's 2002 campaign, and his final game will go down as the greatest World Cup single game performance ever. If we're talking about a player who's done this so far this year, he has to be within the top 2, the top 3. And he's also scored 19 goals in the league so far, which puts him within the top 3 greatest scorers in the world. And again, he's playing in League 1, so those numbers are a bit dumbed down. But then again, you have the World Cup performance. If it wasn't for the World Cup performance, honestly, I might have Mbappe a step or 2 down, but that's about it. But the World Cup performance really puts him up there. It really solidifies his case as at least the number 2 in the world. When I'm talking about how direct Saka is, Mbappe and Saka are within the same tier. 2 of, if not the 2 most direct offensive players in the game right now. His ability to beat opponents, whether just off of pace alone, on a one-on-one dribbling against players. Mbappe is a very, very complete striker. A very weird mix between Henry and Cristiano Ronaldo. When you have this kind of comparisons, you're always going to be within those conversations as one of the best players in the world. Again, for Mbappe, for him to be the best player in the world, bar none, he needs to go to a big league. League 1 is not a big league. I'd rather watch the Eredivisie. I'd rather watch the Portuguese league, and I can name another 5 leagues over the League 1. It's not competitive, and even if you want to argue, at least towards the bottom is competitive, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. You have to go to a league like the Premier League, like La Liga, like Serie A, where you can actually compete, where your performances will actually mean something. And not only is he playing for PSG, a team that's clear of any other team in the League 1, he's also playing with Messi, Neymar, and all of these other players. It's like, yes, you can play with great players, but if you're going to play with great players, at least go to a team like Real Madrid or Barcelona, where you're going to be in a league that's way more competitive, or in the Premier League. Mbappe needs to move to be certified as the best player in the world. He needs it. He really needs it. But Mbappe number 2, let's talk about the number 1, Lionel Messi. And we'll talk about the World Cup performance, but I just want to highlight how Messi, even at the age that he's in at right now, is the best creator in the world. And this is really the separator between him and Ronaldo. This won't be a Ronaldo versus Messi debate. It's not fair on Ronaldo right now, and it's not really good for this video. I don't want to make this video too long. I'm looking at the recording thing, and we're already at 27 minutes. Messi's creative ability. Messi ranks amongst the top 10 for plus minus along Europe's top 5 leagues. He also ranks in the top 10 for the most successful take-ons in world football. I'm talking about how direct Mbappe and Saka are. Messi, even at this age, is within that same tier. He has the most goal-creating actions. He has the most shot-creating actions. He has the most through balls. He has the most passes into the final third in Europe's top 5 leagues. He has the second highest expected assist. He has the most assists in Europe. And then he also scored 7 goals in the World Cup to help Argentina win the whole thing. He won the World Cup. He was the best player in the World Cup. When he comes to PSG, yeah, sure, he is playing in League 1. Let's not hide that fact. But even in League 1, to be the best creator across Europe's top 5 leagues, he is the best in the world. He is the best football player in the world. He's not scoring as much at PSG because I think he's let that responsibility go to Mbappe. If you have 2 players like trying to be the top scorer in the team, it doesn't really work. So I think he's let Mbappe take that burden, take that mantle, which Mbappe has taken very well. That's why he's number 2 on the list. But when it comes to scoring, when he was asked to score, when he was asked to step up for Argentina, he did it. He won the World Cup, guys. Messi has been the number 1 since 2008 in the world, and now he has the World Cup to go alongside him, and now Ronaldo is no longer here. He was always going to be number 1. But yeah, guys, that's my top 10. I'll go over it again. Messi number 1, Mbappe number 2, De Bruyne number 3, Kane number 4, Haaland number 5, Casemiro number 6, Osimhen number 7, Rashford number 8, Saka number 9, and Kimmich number 10. That's my top 10 football players in the world at the moment.